Thank you guys for making it out. My name is Carlos Aguilar. I'm a film critic here in Los Angeles, and it's my pleasure to be here tonight for this conversation with writer, director, and star Natalie Morales.
Oh, this is like official.
I know.
It's like seats and microphones and everything. Hi. You're all here. That's so nice.
Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Yeah, so I read. I'll start by sort of the inception of this. You have another film that you directed, Plan B, that you guys could watch on Hulu if you haven't yet.
Thank you.
You were making that film when the world sort of changed through the pandemic, and then how did this come about in that sort of moment?
So I was set to direct my first feature, Plan B, and in March of 2020. And so we know what happened then. My like particular brand of anxiety always makes up like some reason I'm not going to get to do my dream job. Usually it's that I'm going to like crash on the way to work or something. It was not clever enough to think of like worldwide pandemic. Oh, wait, that's me. That's the first time I've had like a card. It's very exciting for me. Anyway, so yes, we got shut down. We had prepped, we had painted houses, we had bleached people's hair. We had done a bunch of stuff, and we got shut down the Friday before the Monday when we were going to start shooting. And I didn't know if it was coming back, or if the world was coming back, or if we were all going to die. A lot of us did. And it was very scary. It still is scary. But then a couple months into lockdown, Mark called me and was like, "Do you speak Spanish?" And I was like, "Yes." And he goes, I have an idea. I've been taking some Spanish classes online." And I was like, "Okay, what's the idea?" And he's like, "No, that was the idea." And I was like, "Okay." He's like, "I want to write a movie about that. Do you want to write it with me? I don't know what happens." And I was like, "All right, yeah, let's figure that out." So then we made this. From the time that he called me to the time when we wrapped was like 4 weeks. Mark Duplass works very fast. We shot this in 4 days. We shot the end first because I knew I wanted it to end that way. I just didn't know how to get there. And then we shot the rest. And then when I was editing this, Plan B was like, "We're coming back." And I was like, "Oh, God, I have to finish editing this movie." So I was editing this on the weekends and doing Plan B, filming Plan B in Syracuse. And then this came out for Berlin and South by Southwest first. And then Plan B came out in May on Hulu. And now this is out right now. So that was the weird, very synergistic double debut for me.
And since you said that you guys worked so quickly, what was that writing process like? Was it very specific, or just ideas and then leave it up for the acting to happen?
No, definitely not. Especially when you're speaking in Spanish and you're speaking in another language. I speak Spanish, but I'm by no means a Spanish teacher, so I had to get. When I speak Spanish, it's like the Spanish I speak to my mom and my family, which is not proper, and certainly not somebody who is on a teaching level. And Mark speaks pretty good Spanish, but not as good as Adam. No, the writing process of it was very different for me and really interesting. So I think when he called me and we talked about it for a little, then we were like, okay, we both want to do this. And then there was that moment of, we gotta write a script now, which is like a lot of work. And so I was like, hey, okay, how about this? I have an idea. Why don't we both go off our separate ways and we, just as an experiment, write biographies on these two characters and don't tell the other person, like just without consulting, just write your own thing. And then we'll come back together once we figured that out and see where they can intersect and how we can collide these people and what they have in common and what they don't have in common. And so we did that. And that was really fun to do. That was it really inspired the rest of the story and how we would lay things out and how we would find things out. And so we did write a lot of the scenes, especially all the Spanish stuff, but some of the scenes, we knew what we wanted it to happen in the scene, and we knew what information we wanted to get out, and we knew maybe some jokes or some little bits of movement that we wanted, but we also really wanted to keep it feeling supernatural and fresh, so we didn't want it to feel like we had done the scene over and over again, so that we did improvise a lot of the dialogue because we didn't want it to feel canned or like, you know, a conversation that we've already had. You know, it's even the best actors, like, laughing at the same joke 7 times does not feel that real, and you can't hide behind a cut because you're on a close-up of both of our faces the entire time. So we wanted to keep it as fresh and conversational as possible and realistic as possible.
How much did you have to help him with the Spanish? Because I mean, it's actually pretty impressive.
He's pretty good, right? I didn't have to help him a lot. I mean, sometimes I did. I didn't have to help him a lot. He was pretty good. Yeah.
In terms of the visuals, you were talking about the close-ups. I feel like it's also a very interesting, you know, way of delivering a movie because we access their intimate spaces, their home, and you know, it creates a different sort of dynamic. What were you thinking with the visual choices when you have these limited spaces?
Yeah, well, that's very intentional, you know. I mean, most of it was shot, well, at Mark's house, which was like, okay, this is a ridiculous looking place that you have, which I think he ended up feeling self-conscious about and sold it after we made this movie. It's like, this is too big, I feel weird. We shot, and not all of it, but most of it was in my house, and which is considerably smaller than Mark Duplass's house. But we also very intentionally made the backgrounds what they were. You know, we wanted it to feel not only for the viewer to not be bored with the same backgrounds, but also to use that to our advantage to inform and the story and to tell you more about these characters. She's very, not only is she less well off, but she's also very contained, and the background has, you know, of her classroom has different little things that tell you what's going on in her life. And when he calls her, you know, unexpectedly at the end, it's not the same nice setup that she usually has. And I found, I mean, at that point when we filmed it, we weren't all on Zoom as much as we have been now, you know, a year later, but we were already on it a lot. And I think it's interesting, this thing that we do on Zoom is that we kind of like over-enunciate and overdo things with our expressions and our hands and our eyes so that we are understood by the other party. And not only that, sometimes maybe we curate what our background looks like so that it's not some big mess in the background, but the other person on the screen can only judge what they see. So they're going, that's who this person is. This is what this background looks like. That's their house. I can see their house. And you make judgments about people. We all do. We do that when we meet them in person. And on Zoom, you get to see a little bit into someone's house, you know? And I thought that was really interesting to explore in this. And the backgrounds really do inform a lot about the characters if you, hopefully subtly and hopefully subconsciously, but if you watch it more than once, you'll start to notice all the little differences in the background of Cariño every time that you see her, and in Mark's, just to give you a little piece of everything that happens, yeah.
You know, when you were making this, you know, the movie doesn't mention the pandemic. It doesn't acknowledge that. It just happens to be that their distance is, you know, geographical. Was it because you thought that it wasn't gonna last this long, or you guys didn't make it timeless?
Both. Yeah. For some wild reason, we were like, by the time this comes out, COVID will be old news, and everyone will be like, God, this movie is dated. That's not the case, which is really sad. But also when we were making, it was a decision. We really did talk about it because, like you saw at the end there, we shot that first. So I was like, if she came from the airport, she would be wearing a mask. We have to figure this out. And we decided, like, we were already sick of it. We were already sick of seeing people with masks and being reminded of it. So we wanted to offer ourselves and our audience a little bit of that escapism. And we also wanted the movie to be a little bit more evergreen. So it was a mixture of both. It was like, A, we thought it might be over. B, we didn't want to remind people of this time, and we wanted to give you that escapism, and we wanted the movie to live in a time that wasn't so narrow. Hopefully it is a narrow point of time. Yeah.
As a director who's also, acting in the film, how did that sort of relationship work when you're shooting this on screens?
Yeah, it was interesting. I'd say the weirdest part of it is seeing yourself, which I X'd out a lot because you get like, I don't want to perform for myself. Like, I don't know. It was really interesting to be totally alone in my house and acting in a movie. Like, that was just so weird. But it was fun, because once the thing that happens, what I was explaining before about the Zoom calls, is that you have this artifice, right? But once you're on like 5 Zoom calls with the same person over and over again, you start to drop that, and you start to just kind of relax. And that's what ended up happening with me and Mark and the really small crew of people that we had on these Zoom calls with us. We shot this on separate webcams, separately from the Zoom calls, but we also were looking at each other through Zoom when we did this. So I was able to like get right in my computer space and look at Mark, which is really kind of cool to get to do that, So it's nice to, I think sometimes constraints can be very inspiring and very, at least for me, I guess I like the aspect of problem solving, so it's kind of fun to find what you can do within limitations.
I love the aspect of language in this film because I do feel like it sort of changes the dynamic. She's bilingual, and then we see him really having to think about the words that he has to say. So there's sort of a different thought process. Was that something that you were thinking about when making a movie so related to language?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think, something that I realized while making this is that when you're not speaking in your primary language and when you're struggling to speak something you only know, your vocabulary is shorter, you're instantly more vulnerable and you're instantly more open because all you can do is get the bare thing out. You can only go like, I want food. You can't go like, oh yeah, sure, I'm feeling a little bit peckish. You can't like hide among your vocabulary and your words. The only thing you have is what you mean, and that was really kind of fascinating, especially when it came to Mark. And I think for Mark, performing in a language that he doesn't know was both challenging and also opened that up for him, where he couldn't hide behind some other word. He had to just get out what he needed to get out. Yeah.
When you're making a movie like this, I feel like the immediate sort of thought is that, the message is that it's hard to make connections over the internet, and I feel like the movie gets at sort of like how much can you really know a person or the assumptions that we make, but, eventually, the movie, sort of disproves that and there can be a connection. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, there's more than just their locations that separates them, it's their genders, it's their sexual preference, it's their class, it's their language, it's their culture, it's their ethnicity, it's all of these different things that that separate us on an everyday level and that actually mean nothing. Those things are all just as surface as a Zoom call is, because you can connect with people that are very different than you in a completely different place than you, and you can find connection in very unexpected places. And I think, now more than ever, that's what we're all craving. We're all craving that, someone that understands us. We're very divided, not only as a country, but I think globally there's just a lot of like division and a lot of like stress, and everybody's having a hard time. And when we were making that Mark was the first person I'd hugged in months, and it made me cry, So like we were literally in need of physical connection as well. So that's a big theme of this movie because it was true to what we were feeling at the time, and I think true to what I'm still feeling, and I know a lot of people are still feeling.
Were you looking for something, to act in Spanish? Had you had the opportunity to sort of like exercise that language muscle in acting?
No, I wasn't looking for it. There was Mark that called me and brought it in, and I'm so happy that he did, because I had never acted in Spanish before. It's my first language. My entire family are Cuban refugees, and my grandparents only spoke Spanish, and they raised me, and you're leaving. How dare you? No, I'm just kidding. Bye. Have a good night. It's okay. It's totally okay. Thank you. I'm getting so emotional and you're leaving. No, they're fine. It's okay. They just don't care about human connection. No, so it's my first language, but I think that I really realized making this movie and through everything that happened last year in connection with race and in connection with being a minority, is that I realized, honestly, how far back I had pushed this part of myself in order to succeed in this country. I think that starting out in this business, I was like, I can't be too Latina or I won't get the role. I can't wear red to auditions or I'll look too Latina. I can't wear hoop earrings or I'll look too Latina. Because I knew, just from experience and just from seeing other people, my peers around me, that the people that like in my community were very funny and very good actors weren't getting roles because the people hiring them did not have that perspective. And so I was like, I know what they want, and I know what that comedy is. I mean, I it's kind of a double-edged sword. I grew up on television. I mean, I had a single mom who worked all the time, and my grandparents were the ones taking care of me, so which means I watched tons of television. And so I really liked and knew comedy so well, and I was raised on this like American television, and I knew that I couldn't have a Miami accent, and I knew that I would just be more successful if I was more palatable to the people on the other side, but it was really subconscious. It was not a conscious thing until very recently that I was like, I mean, this is how I talk. I'm not faking my voice, but I did try to speak more neutrally in order to be a more successful actor, and the truth is that is what was needed at the time. And so this is so meaningful to me because a lot of my family hasn't been able to enjoy the work or watch the work that I've done because they don't understand it because it's all in English. And this is something that they'll understand for the first time. And that means so much to me. And I feel, I don't know if it's a product of just me getting a little bit older, or getting a little bit more confident, or just 2020 making me like give no fucks and like not have any time for bullshit anymore. But I just feel a lot more accepting of who I am and where I come from and what my roots are. And it is a difficult thing to be, a children of immigrants and a child of immigrants, and because you're kind of stuck between these two worlds. I mean, people talk about that all the time, but it's true. Like, I'm not really as Cuban as them or as how I was raised, and I'm not as American as the peers that I have, so I kind of feel like I don't know where I belong, but now I know that I belong exactly where I am, and that I belong also with a foot in these two worlds, and that who I am as a person, and my experiences, and my thoughts, and my opinions, and my tastes, and the way that I dress, and the way that I express myself are just as valid and just as worthy of being hired, and just as important as anybody else's. And that took me a while to learn, but I did learn it. Thank you. Thanks.
Have your parents or your family members seen the film already?
Yes, they're not my extended family. They're going to see it in Miami next week, I think. But my immediate family saw it and was like very, very happy about it, which was really meant a lot to me.
Before we wrap, I have to ask you about this story of the student and the bollo. Is that taken from reality or was it made up? It felt very real to be made up.
No, it was very real. It happened. I'm so glad you asked me. So yes, my family is all Cuban, and my mom, before she was married to my stepdad, he came over for a dinner, and he's Argentinian. And we were all at dinner. My grandparents were meeting him, and they were kind of sussing him out. And he was like, "Can you pass the pussy, please?" And my grandmother was like, and it was very funny to a 13-year-old me. I could not stop laughing. That's one of those kind of stuck in both worlds. I kind of knew what he meant, and I knew what my grandmother thought, and there was no explaining. It was just so funny. So I thought it was a good place to use it.
Was he embarazado?
He was very embarazado. Yeah. He was very embarazado.
Thank you,
he's
Natalie.
still my stepdad, so he made it through. It was good. Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so much.
Thank
you,
you
everybody, for coming. You're all so wonderful. Please stay safe. Thank you.